We're diving into Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, a classic.
Right. This book's been a bestseller for ages, almost a century, so it's got to have some timeless advice tucked away, don't you think?
Definitely. What's fascinating about Carnegie is that he wasn't some guru living in a cave. He started by teaching public speaking.
Okay, so he was observing what worked, what made people actually connect.
Exactly. It's like he was taking notes on human interaction. And this book is like his field guide to getting along with, well, anyone.
Less about manipulation, more about real connection then.
100%. And he doesn't waste any time getting to the good stuff. The first part throws down a challenge. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Really? But isn't feedback, even critical feedback, how we grow?
It's what we're told, yeah.
Yeah.
But Carnegie argues that more often than not, it backfires. Think about it. When someone points out your flaws, even if they have good intentions, how do you react?
Honestly, defensive. Even if I know they're right, part of me just wants to argue.
Exactly. Our natural instinct is to protect our ego, not change our behavior. So we justify our actions instead of actually being open to feedback. Carnegie tells this great story about a pilot, Bob Hoover, to illustrate this.
Is that the one where a mechanic puts the wrong fuel in his plane?
That's the one. After a near-death experience because of that mistake, Hoover could have gone off on the mechanic.
I can imagine.
But he did something totally unexpected. He calmly asked the mechanic to service his plane again the next day.
Wow. Talk about trust and nerves of steel.
Right. It perfectly embodies choosing understanding over blame, even when it's hard. And that's something you can apply to any relationship, work, personal life, you name it.
So instead of pointing fingers, we try to understand their perspective. That's a subtle shift, but I can see how it would make a huge difference.
It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to mess up and learn.
Okay, this is making me rethink my whole approach to giving feedback. What's Carnegie's next big idea?
Get ready for this one. It's deceptively simple. Give honest and sincere appreciation.
All right, so butter people up. I can do that.
Well, hold on. It's not about laying it on thick. It's about genuine appreciation. Think about a time when someone sincerely acknowledged your work. How did that make you feel?
Honestly, on top of the world, like it made all the effort worth it.
There you go. That's because it taps into a basic human need. We all want to feel valued. And it's not just a fleeting good feeling. When we feel appreciated, we're more likely to do those things again.
So it's not just about making their day, it's about encouraging good behavior.
And strengthening relationships, absolutely. But there's a catch. It's got to be genuine. People can sniff out a fake compliment a mile away.
Noted. So no praising someone's fashion choices unless I actually mean it.
Exactly. Find something specific you admire. A skill, an accomplishment, a personality trait. That sincerity is what makes it stick.
Okay, this is already making me rethink my conversational autopilot. What else does Carnegie have for us?
This one is a game changer when it comes to influencing people. He calls it arousing in the other person an eager want.
Ooh, now we're talking. This sounds less about being nice and more about getting what you want.
Well, not quite. It's about understanding what they want and framing things in a way that aligns with those desires. Think of it like this. You catch more fish with the right bait, right?
I get the analogy. You're saying we need to speak to their needs, not just our own. But how do we even know what they want in the first place?
That's where observation comes in, and asking the right questions. Carnegie tells this funny story about his sister-in-law who was struggling to get her kids to write thank you notes.
Oh, no, I've been there.
Right. Well, they weren't having it until, let's just say, Carnegie found a way to sweeten the deal.
Tapping into what kids really want. I'm betting it involved a certain amount of money.
You got it. Suddenly, those thank you notes were a top priority. It's a lighthearted example, but it proves a crucial point.
Sometimes to get someone on board, you need to show them how it benefits them.
Exactly. Find that win-win and you're golden.
So we've talked about finding that win-win, speaking to their needs. What's next?
Well, the next part of the book gets really practical. It lays out 6 ways to make people like you.
6 ways. Okay, I'm listening.
And these aren't just about making a good first impression. It's about building real rapport.
Even better. Okay, hit me with number 1.
First up is become genuinely interested in others.
So be a good listener. I can nod along and pretend to be fascinated, right?
Well, it goes deeper than that. Remember we were saying how everyone's living their own movie?
Right.
When you're genuinely interested in someone's story, what they're passionate about, it's incredibly validating.
Yeah, it's like you're saying, hey, you matter. Your experiences are interesting.
Exactly. And how do we show that interest? By asking good questions, going beyond the surface level. Instead of, how was your weekend? Try, what was the highlight of your weekend?
Ooh, I like that. Makes them think back to the good stuff.
Right. And then when they do share, really listen. Ask follow-up questions. Let the conversation flow naturally.
So be present, engaged, curious. Okay, I can work with that. What's next on the list?
This one might seem obvious, but it's important. Smile.
Oh, okay, I gotta be honest. When I first read that, I was like, really? Am I supposed to walk around grinning like a maniac?
Uh-huh. Not quite. It's not about forcing it. It's about projecting warmth and approachability, like a universal sign for I'm open to connecting.
Right, like when someone approaches you with a smile, it instantly puts you at ease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's actual science behind it. Smiling releases endorphins both in you and the person you're smiling at. It's a positive feedback loop. Carnegie even tells a story about a grumpy old stockbroker who turned his whole life around just by smiling more.
Wow, seriously? Just from smiling? What happened?
Well, he was pretty miserable and unsuccessful,
Yeah.
and, well, let's just say things took a very positive turn.
Okay, I'm convinced. A smile costs nothing and apparently can change your life. What's next?
This one we can all probably relate to and maybe feel a little guilty about sometimes. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound. Be honest. How many times have you completely blanked on someone's name?
Oh, all the time. And then I spend the whole conversation trying to avoid saying their name because I feel so awkward.
Uh-huh. Yep, we've all been there. But here's the thing. Using someone's name shows respect. It says you were listening when you met them. It makes them feel seen.
Makes sense. It's not just about avoiding embarrassment, it's about making them feel valued.
Exactly. Now, how to actually become a name-remembering master? It's all about those mental hooks. When you meet someone, repeat their name back to them. Associate it with a visual image, something memorable.
So if I meet someone named Sarah and she has amazing hair, I could think Sarah with the great hair.
There you go. The more senses you engage, the more memorable it becomes. And the next time you see them, boom, you're ready with their name, makes them feel like they stood out to you.
Simple but effective. I like it. What's the next principle?
This one goes hand in hand with remembering names. It's about being a good listener. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Well, that sounds easy enough. Just sit back, nod along, let them talk my ear off.
Uh-huh. Well, there's a little more to it than that. It's about being present, engaged in what they're saying, asking clarifying questions, making them feel like they're the only person in the room.
So active listening, not just passive hearing. Show them you actually care about what they have to say.
You got it. Think about a time when someone really listened to you. Didn't it feel amazing to have your thoughts validated like that?
Oh, absolutely. It's like they're reflecting back your worth.
And when you give that gift to others, it creates a powerful connection. People crave feeling heard. And being a good listener, that's one of the best gifts you can give.
Okay, I'm ready to put on my listening ears. What else have we got? So we've covered being genuinely interested, really listening. What other conversational tricks does Carnegie have up his sleeve?
Well, this next one ties back to that fishing with the right bait idea. Carnegie says we should talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Okay, so find that common ground, something that sparks a connection. But how do we do that without seeming fake?
It's all about being observant, picking up on clues during your conversations. What gets them excited? What are they passionate about?
So instead of steering the conversation toward what I find interesting.
You got to be tuned in to what lights them up.
Exactly.
And it's not about faking it. It's about finding those genuine points of connection. Let's say you're talking to someone and you realize they're really into sustainable living.
I could mention that new eco-friendly product I read about.
See? You're already getting it. You're giving them a conversational gift, something relevant to their interests.
It makes those conversations so much more engaging for both people, right?
Exactly. You're building a bridge by connecting over shared interests. This is making me think about those awkward networking events.
Yeah.
I used to just default to talking about the weather.
Oh, tell me about it. All right, what's the final principle in this section? I feel like we're building up to something big.
Get ready for it. This one's powerful. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
Okay, that's huge. We all want to feel like we matter, right?
Absolutely. And this isn't about empty flattery. It's about finding those small but meaningful ways to acknowledge their worth.
So how do we do that? How do we make someone feel important without it feeling forced?
It's about paying attention and finding those opportunities to highlight their strengths. Like if you're in a meeting and someone shares a really great idea.
Don't just let it go by unnoticed.
Exactly. Acknowledge their contribution, talk about its potential impact.
Make them feel seen and appreciated.
You got it. And when you do that, you tap into their motivation. They're more receptive to your ideas too.
Wow, Carnegie's given us a lot to think about today. It's amazing how these simple ideas can have such a big impact on how we connect with people.
It really is. It's about shifting our mindset. Instead of, what can I get out of this? It's, how can I make this a win-win?
Approaching every interaction like an opportunity to learn, to connect, to grow.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into how to win friends and influence people, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
If you only remember one thing, let it be this.
Yeah.
If you want to build relationships and have a positive influence, you have to shift your focus from yourself to others.
Be genuinely curious, be empathetic, really make an effort to understand the other person.
It's amazing what can happen when you do that.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Dale Carnegie, thank you for giving us a roadmap to navigate this whole human connection thing. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.